What would you do if you found a photo of another woman in your bedroom? Not just any woman, but your husband's mistress, wearing your clothes, sleeping in your bed while you were at work, 7 months pregnant. Sarah Martinez thought she knew her husband, thought she knew her life. But when she discovered that Instagram photo, she realized she had been living in a carefully constructed lie. What started as a devastating betrayal quickly became something much more sinister. Because Jessica Lane wasn't just a mistress. She was a predator, a professional homewrecker who had turned destroying families into a profitable business. She had a blog. She had a system. And Sarah's marriage was just her latest target. But Jessica made one crucial mistake. She underestimated a pregnant mother's fury and a teacher's determination to protect her students, even when those students were other women's families. This is the story of how one photo started a war, and how the woman who was supposed to be the victim became the hunter instead. If you're ready for a story of betrayal, revenge, and ultimate justice, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Sarah's situation, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on because you won't want to miss how this incredible true story unfolds. Let's begin. Sarah Martinez stood at the front of her classroom, her 7-month pregnant belly stretching the fabric of her favorite teaching dress. Paint-stained fingers gestured toward the canvas where 12-year-old Emma had just created something beautiful. "This is exactly what I mean about finding light in unexpected places," Sarah said, her voice warm with genuine pride. "You took something ordinary and made it extraordinary." Emma beamed, and Sarah felt that familiar flutter of joy that teaching brought her. This was her world. Room 203 at Lincoln Middle School, where she had taught art for 8 years, where kids discovered they could create magic with their own 2 hands. The dismissal bell rang, and students rushed past her with calls of, "Bye, Mrs. Martinez," and "See you tomorrow." Sarah gathered her things slowly, one hand supporting her lower back. The baby had been particularly active today, as if he too was excited about their growing family. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mike. "Got the Morrison contract. Biggest job yet. Dinner at Romano's to celebrate." Sarah smiled, typing back, "Can't wait to hear everything. Love you." The drive home took her through their neighborhood, past houses that looked just like theirs, small lawns, chain-link fences, driveways with pickup trucks and minivans. This was Middle America, where people worked hard and dreamed of something better. Their house sat on Maple Street, a modest 3-bedroom with blue shutters that Mike had painted himself. Sarah pulled into the driveway next to his work truck, noting the new toolbox in the back. Business was finally picking up. Inside, 2-year-old Sophia ran toward her on unsteady legs. Mama Daddy's happy dancing. Sarah found Mike in the kitchen, spinning around with a beer in his hand. At 35, he still had the build of the high school football player she had fallen in love with, though his dark hair now showed gray at the temples. "Sarah, baby, we did it," Mike said, sweeping her into a careful hug that accommodated her belly. "The Morrison project is worth more than I made all last year. We can finally start that college fund for the kids." Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. They had struggled for so long, counting every dollar, choosing between groceries and utilities. Mike's construction business had been feast or famine, mostly famine, but he never gave up, working weekends, taking any job that came along. "Tell me everything," she said, settling onto the couch while Mike made her tea. "It's a complete renovation of that big house on Elm Street. You know, the one with the wraparound porch. They want custom everything. Kitchen, bathrooms, the works. 6 months of steady work. Sarah, real money." As Mike talked about permits and timelines, Sarah let herself imagine. Maybe they could finally afford that down payment on a bigger house. Maybe she could cut back to part-time teaching after the baby came. Maybe, for once, they could breathe. Later that evening, after Sophia was in bed and they had celebrated with takeout Chinese food because Romano's was too expensive, even on celebration night, Sarah stood in the bathroom brushing her teeth. In the mirror, she studied her reflection, tired eyes, hair that needed a cut, stretch marks mapping her changing body. "You're beautiful," Mike said, appearing behind her. His hands rested on her shoulders. "I know things have been tight, but they're going to get better now. I promise." Sarah leaned back against his chest, feeling safe in his arms. This was their life. Not glamorous, not Instagram perfect, but real. Built on love and hope and the belief that hard work would pay off eventually. She had no idea that 3 blocks away, Jessica Lane was already researching her husband online, planning her next move. Jessica Lane adjusted her ring light for the 3rd time, checking her reflection in her phone camera. At 24, she had mastered the art of looking effortlessly perfect. Honey blonde hair fell in loose waves over her shoulders, and her makeup was the kind that looked natural but took an hour to achieve. "Good morning, beautiful humans," she said to her phone, recording her daily Instagram story. "Your girl is starting a new project today, and I am so excited to share this journey with you." Her studio apartment in the trendy part of town was perfectly curated for social media. White walls, gold accents, plants positioned just so. It looked expensive, though Jessica could barely afford the rent. Her 100,000 followers didn't know that she survived on ramen and credit cards. "So, I've been thinking about authenticity lately," she continued, walking toward her vision board. "About real love, real connections, not the fake stuff we see online all the time." The truth was, Jessica was tired of dating boys her own age. They had no money, no ambition, nothing to offer except good abs and empty promises. She wanted more. She deserved more. "I'm launching a new series called Finding Mr. Right. I'm going to document my journey to find true love with someone substantial, someone real." She had already done her research. Construction permits were public record, and Mike Martinez had just landed the biggest contract in town. His social media showed a pretty wife, a cute kid, another baby on the way, the perfect family man, the perfect target. Jessica had learned that married men were actually easier than single ones. They craved excitement, validation, the thrill of being desired by someone young and available, and they had something to lose, which made them generous. Her phone buzzed with comments from her live video. Heart eye emojis, fire emojis, women asking for dating advice. These followers were her only real asset, and she was going to monetize them. "I'll be sharing everything. Gorgeous," she said to the camera. "The good, the bad, the messy truth about modern dating. Because we're all just trying to find our person, right?" After ending the video, Jessica opened her laptop and pulled up Mike's construction company website. There he was, smiling in a hard hat, arms crossed over his chest. Not bad looking, in a rugged, working man way. More importantly, his recent Facebook posts showed him at the coffee shop on 5th Street every morning at 7:30. Tomorrow, she would be there too. Jessica spent the afternoon crafting her approach. She would need a reason to be in that part of town. Something believable. A blog post about supporting local businesses. Maybe. She practiced her surprised expression in the mirror, the casual conversation starter that would seem completely accidental. "Excuse me, aren't you Mike Martinez? I'm doing a piece on successful local entrepreneurs." Perfect. Flattery disguised as journalism. Men ate that up. She selected her outfit carefully. jeans that hugged in all the right places, a sweater that was both modest and revealing, hair that looked like she had just rolled out of bed but had actually taken 40 minutes to style. That evening, Jessica lay in bed scrolling through Sarah's social media. The woman was pretty in a wholesome, mom-next-door way. Her posts were all about teaching, pregnancy updates, family moments. Boring. No wonder her husband might be tempted by someone more exciting. Jessica studied the photos of their house, memorizing details. The blue shutters, the flower boxes Sarah had painted, the swing set in the backyard. Soon, she would know this world intimately. Phase 1 starts tomorrow, she whispered to herself, already imagining the content she would create. The before and after photos, the dramatic reveals, the final victory post when she had everything she wanted. Her followers loved a good transformation story. They had no idea they were about to watch her transform someone else's life into her own. Mike Martinez had always been a creature of habit. Every morning at 7:30, he stopped at Billionaire coffee shop for a large black coffee and a breakfast sandwich. It was his quiet moment before the chaos of the construction site, his ritual of preparation for the day ahead. He was surprised to see the blonde woman struggling with the door, arms full of camera equipment and notebooks. Without thinking, he reached around her to pull the door open. "Thank you so much," she said, looking up at him with wide blue eyes. "I'm such a disaster with all this stuff." "No problem," Mike replied, following her inside. He couldn't help but notice she was beautiful, in a way that seemed almost artificial, like women in magazines. Jessica pretended to fumble with her order, giving Mike time to approach the counter. She had timed this perfectly. "Large black coffee and a bacon-egg sandwich," Mike told the barista. "Excuse me," Jessica said, turning toward him. "I'm sorry to bother you. But aren't you Mike Martinez? I'm Jessica Lane. I have a lifestyle blog, and I'm doing a series on local entrepreneurs. I've heard amazing things about your work." Mike felt a flush of pride. He wasn't used to being recognized for his business success. "That's me, though I don't know how amazing it is. Just honest work." "That's exactly what I mean," Jessica said, her voice animated. "Real people building real businesses. Not some tech startup or inherited company. You're creating something with your own hands." They found themselves sitting at a small table by the window, Jessica's phone recording as she asked questions about his business. She was genuinely interested, or at least seemed to be. When was the last time someone had asked him about his dreams, his challenges, his vision for the future? "So the Morrison house, that's a huge project," Jessica said, leaning forward. "It must be incredible to transform something so completely." "It really is," Mike said, warming to the subject. "Taking something broken and making it beautiful again. There's nothing like it." Jessica smiled, and something in her expression made Mike's pulse quicken. "I'd love to see your work sometime. Maybe I could do a photo series about the transformation process." "I don't know if the clients would go for that," Mike said, though part of him wanted to say yes immediately. "Of course, I totally understand. Maybe just the before shots of your other projects. I'm really passionate about showcasing authentic craftsmanship." Before he knew it, they had exchanged numbers. Jessica explained she was new to town, researching local businesses for her blog. She seemed so enthusiastic about his work, so impressed by what he had built from nothing. Driving to the job site, Mike found himself thinking about their conversation. Sarah was wonderful, but she had heard all his work stories before. She knew his struggles, his failures, his fears about money and security. Jessica saw only his success, his strength, his potential. His phone buzzed with a text. "Thanks for the amazing interview. Can't wait to share your story with my followers. You're an inspiration." Mike smiled, saving her number in his contacts. Meanwhile, Sarah was in her classroom, setting up art supplies for the day's lesson on color theory. She was explaining to her students how different shades could create emotion, how artists used contrast to tell stories. When her phone buzzed with a notification, it was an Instagram story from someone called Jessica Lane, tagged with their town's location. Sarah didn't recognize the name, but something made her click on it. Just had the most amazing conversation with a local entrepreneur. Jessica's voice said over a photo of the coffee shop. Can't wait to share this inspiring story with you all. Sarah dismissed it and returned to her teaching. Her world was full, meaningful, complete. She had no reason to worry about strangers with cameras, no reason to think this moment would change everything. But in the parking lot of the construction site, Mike was already looking forward to tomorrow morning's coffee run. Jessica's follow-up text came that afternoon. Hi Mike, I've been thinking about our conversation all day. Would you be free for coffee again tomorrow? I have some follow-up questions for the article. Mike stared at the message longer than he should have. Sarah was at her prenatal appointment. Sophia was napping, and the house felt empty around him. He had been working 12-hour days lately, coming home exhausted, falling into bed without much conversation. When was the last time he and Sarah had really talked about anything other than bills and doctor appointments? Sure, he typed back. Same time, same place. Perfect, looking forward to it. The next morning, Jessica was already at their table when Mike arrived. She had dressed more casually today, in yoga pants and a fitted tank top that showed off her figure. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun that somehow looked perfectly styled. I hope you don't mind, she said, gesturing to her laptop. I started writing your profile last night and I couldn't stop. Your story is so compelling. She turned the screen toward him, and Mike felt a surge of pride reading her words. She had described him as a master craftsman with the soul of an artist, and a self-made success story that proves the American dream is alive and well. This is really nice, he said. Sarah's going to love it. How does she feel about your success? Jessica asked, her voice casual but her eyes sharp. She's proud, of course, but she worries. You know, about taking on too much work, about the stress. She wants me to be careful. Jessica nodded sympathetically. That's natural for pregnant women, or all those hormones make them anxious about everything. But you can't let fear hold you back from your potential. Something about the way she said it made Mike feel understood in a way he hadn't in months. Sarah did worry, constantly. About money, about his long hours, about whether they could handle another child. Her concerns felt like criticism sometimes, like she didn't trust him to take care of their family. Tell me about your vision for the business, Jessica said. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Mike found himself talking about dreams he rarely voiced, expanding the company, buying equipment, maybe even building custom homes from the ground up. Jessica listened with rapt attention, asking smart questions, encouraging him to think bigger. You could be so much more than just a contractor, she said. You could be a brand. Mike Martinez Luxury Homes. I could help you with the marketing, the social media presence. I don't know about luxury, Mike laughed. I'm just a guy with a toolbox. Don't sell yourself short, Jessica said, reaching across the table to touch his hand briefly. You have so much potential, you just need someone who can see it. The touch was innocent, quick, but it sent an electric jolt through him. When was the last time a woman had touched him like that? When was the last time anyone had made him feel like he was capable of greatness? Their coffee meetings became a routine. Jessica was always there, always interested, always making him feel like the most fascinating man in the world. She asked about his childhood, his dreams, his fears. She shared stories about her own struggles as a young entrepreneur, trying to build a business from nothing. "We're alike, you and I," she said one morning. "We both know what it's like to fight for everything we have." Mike began looking forward to these meetings more than he cared to admit. At home, Sarah was increasingly uncomfortable, tired from teaching and pregnancy. Their conversations revolved around practical things: doctor appointments, grocery lists, Sophia's daycare schedule. But with Jessica, he could talk about ideas, possibilities, the future he was building. She made him feel young again, ambitious again. She made him remember who he used to be before responsibility weighed him down. "I've been thinking," Jessica said during their third week of meetings. "I'd love to get some behind-the-scenes footage of you working. Maybe we could meet at the job site sometime." Mike hesitated. The Morrison house was his biggest project, and he didn't want anything to go wrong. But Jessica's enthusiasm was infectious, and the idea of showing off his work to someone who truly appreciated it was appealing. "I guess that would be okay," he said. "Maybe Friday afternoon, when most of the crew has gone home." Jessica smiled, and Mike felt like he had just given her a gift. That evening, Sarah noticed Mike seemed different, more energetic, more talkative about work. She assumed it was excitement about the big project and was happy to see him passionate about his business again. She had no idea that passion was being directed somewhere else entirely. The Morrison house renovation was Mike's masterpiece in progress. Built in 1925, the Victorian had good bones but decades of neglect. Mike had spent months planning every detail, from restoring the original hardwood floors to updating electrical systems behind 100-year-old walls. Jessica arrived Friday afternoon carrying a professional camera and wearing jeans that probably cost more than Mike made in a day. She looked out of place on the construction site, but she seemed genuinely interested in his work. "This is incredible," she breathed, running her hand along a section of original crown molding he had carefully restored. "You're not just a contractor, Mike, you're an artist." Pride swelled in his chest. Sarah supported his work, but she didn't really understand it. To her, construction was just a job that paid the bills. Jessica saw what he saw: the vision, the craftsmanship, the transformation. "Let me show you the master bathroom," he said, leading her upstairs. "We're installing heated floors, a soaking tub with jets, double vanity with granite countertops." Jessica filmed everything, asking intelligent questions about materials and techniques. But Mike noticed her attention seemed to focus more on him than on the renovation details. "You're really in your element here," she said, watching him explain the custom tile work. "This is where you belong, creating beautiful spaces." Something in her tone made him look at her more closely. She was standing closer than necessary, her eyes fixed on his face with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. "Jessica," he started, but she stepped closer. "I hope this isn't too forward," she said, her voice softer now. "But I feel like we have a connection. Like we understand each other in a way that's rare." Mike knew he should step back, should mention Sarah, should do the right thing. Instead, he found himself frozen as Jessica moved even closer. "I know you're married," she whispered. "I know it's complicated, but sometimes connection is bigger than circumstances. Don't you think?" Before he could respond, she kissed him. Soft, tentative at first, then more insistent when he didn't pull away. For a moment that felt like hours, Mike forgot everything else. The weight of responsibility, the stress of bills, the exhaustion of trying to be everything to everyone. When they finally broke apart, reality crashed back in. "I can't," he said, stepping backward. "I'm married. I have a family." "I know," Jessica said, not seeming fazed by his rejection. I'm not asking you to leave them. I'm just asking you to be honest about what you want. She gathered her things calmly, professionally, as if nothing had happened. Think about it, she said at the door. You deserve to be happy. Mike, you deserve to be with someone who sees how amazing you are. That night, Mike couldn't sleep. Sarah lay beside him, one hand resting on her pregnant belly, completely trusting. He felt sick with guilt, but also electric with possibility. Jessica was offering him something he hadn't even realized he was missing: excitement, passion, the feeling of being desired rather than just needed. Over the next week, Jessica's texts became more frequent. Photos of her morning coffee with messages like, "Thinking of you." Articles about successful entrepreneurs with notes like, "This reminded me of our conversation." Nothing overtly inappropriate, but intimate in a way that made Mike's heart race. "Who keeps texting you?" Sarah asked one evening as his phone buzzed for the third time during dinner. "Just work stuff," Mike lied, hating himself for it. But when Jessica suggested meeting for drinks instead of coffee, he said yes. When she chose a bar across town where no one would recognize them, he went anyway. When she talked about how lonely she was, how hard it was to find a real man in a world full of boys, he listened. "I know this is complicated," Jessica said, her hand covering his on the bar table. "But life is short. Mike, don't you deserve to feel alive?" 3 weeks after their first kiss, Mike found himself at Jessica's apartment. It was everything his house wasn't: modern, sleek, no toys scattered on the floor or bills stacked on the counter. Jessica had candles lit, wine open, soft music playing. "I've been thinking about you constantly," she whispered against his ear. Mike knew he was about to cross a line he couldn't uncross. But Sarah felt so far away, and Jessica was right here, wanting him, making him feel like a man instead of just a provider. He stayed until almost midnight, then drove home in a haze of guilt and exhilaration. Sarah was asleep, one hand still protective over their unborn child. Mike showered, washing away Jessica's perfume, and slipped into bed beside his wife. But he was already planning when he could see Jessica again. What Mike didn't know was that Jessica had been documenting everything: photos, videos, screenshots of their text conversations. Not for her blog this time, but for insurance. She had learned that successful extortion required evidence. The trap was set. Now she just had to wait for the perfect moment to spring it. Mike told himself it was just physical, just a temporary escape from the pressure of bills and babies and endless responsibility. Jessica understood that he wasn't leaving Sarah, wasn't abandoning his family. This was just something separate, something just for him. But as weeks passed, the boundaries became blurred. Jessica started texting him throughout the day, sharing details of her life, asking about his. She sent photos of her morning routine, her workouts, her meals, innocent enough individually, but together they created an intimacy that felt dangerous. "Good morning, handsome," her texts would say. "Hope your day is as amazing as you are." Mike found himself responding eagerly, looking forward to these messages more than he should. At home, Sarah was increasingly uncomfortable, her pregnancy making her tired and emotional. Their conversations centered around practical concerns, insurance forms, nursery preparations, Sophia's potty training struggles. "The baby's been kicking all night," Sarah would say, rubbing her lower back. "I think he's going to be a soccer player." Mike would nod and make appropriate responses, but part of his mind was elsewhere. Jessica had sent him a photo of herself in yoga clothes that morning, asking his opinion on her new workout routine. The contrast between his two worlds was stark. Jessica was careful never to push too hard. She never demanded his time or complained about their situation. Instead, she made herself indispensable in small ways. When Mike mentioned stress about a difficult client, she researched negotiation techniques and sent him articles. When he worried about expanding his business, she created a social media strategy for his company. "You don't have to do all this," Mike said during one of their afternoon meetings at her apartment. "I want to," Jessica replied, curled against his chest on her white sofa. "I believe in you, Mike. Someone should be supporting your dreams, not just worrying about risks." The implication stung because it felt true. Sarah did worry constantly about money, about his long hours, about whether they could handle another child. Her concerns felt like criticism, like she didn't trust him to provide for their family. "She means well," Mike said, though his defense of Sarah sounded weak even to him. "Of course she does," Jessica agreed. "But meaning well isn't the same as understanding. She sees obstacles where I see opportunities." Jessica began suggesting small changes. Mike started working out again, claiming he needed to stay strong for physical labor. He bought new clothes, saying his old ones were getting paint-stained. He joined a networking group for small business owners, which gave him legitimate reasons to be out in the evenings. "You seem different lately," Sarah observed one night as they got ready for bed. "More energetic. The pregnancy vitamins doctor recommended must be working." Mike felt a stab of guilt. He had forgotten he had told her he was taking supplements to match her energy level during pregnancy. "Yeah, I think they're helping." He lied. But the lies were getting easier, and that scared him more than anything. Jessica was documenting everything, though Mike didn't realize the extent. She saved every text message, recorded some of their phone calls, took photos when he wasn't looking. Her apartment had security cameras that she claimed were for protection, but that captured every one of their encounters. "I just want to remember these moments," she said when Mike noticed her photographing them together. "Is that okay?" It seemed innocent enough. Couples took photos together all the time, but Jessica's photos were calculated, strategic. She made sure to capture identifying details: Mike's wedding ring, which he had stopped removing during their encounters, his work clothes, distinctive features of her apartment. She was especially careful to document their time in her bedroom, the ornate headboard she had chosen specifically for its uniqueness, the view of the city skyline, the distinctive artwork on the walls. Every image would be unmistakably her space, unmistakably intimate. "I love how comfortable you are here," she whispered one afternoon, taking a selfie of them in bed together. "It's like this is where you belong." Mike was too caught up in the moment to think about why she needed so many photos, or where they might end up. He was living in a bubble where consequences didn't exist, where he could have both the security of his family and the excitement of his affair. But bubbles always burst eventually. The first crack came when Sophia, playing with Mike's phone, accidentally opened his text messages. Sarah found her daughter looking at a screen full of heart emojis and messages that definitely weren't about construction work. "Daddy has a girlfriend," Sophia announced innocently when Sarah asked about the phone. Sarah's blood went cold, but she forced herself to stay calm. "What makes you think that, sweetie?" She sends him pictures. Pretty lady with yellow hair. Sarah's hands shook as she scrolled through Mike's messages with someone named Jessica. The content wasn't explicitly sexual, but it was intimate in a way that made her stomach turn. Pet names, inside jokes, references to spending time together that weren't on any calendar Sarah knew about. That night, after Sophia was in bed, Sarah confronted Mike with trembling hands and tears already starting. "Who is Jessica Lane?" she asked, holding up his phone. The color drained from Mike's face. "Sarah, I can explain." But as he tried to minimize it, to call it just friendship, just business, Sarah found Jessica's Instagram account, the lifestyle blogger with 100,000 followers who posted inspirational quotes about getting what you deserved and never settling for less. And there, in her recent stories, was a photo taken in what was unmistakably someone's bedroom. A bedroom that wasn't hers, with a man's watch visible on the nightstand and rumpled sheets that told a story Sarah didn't want to hear. The caption read, "Cozy Sunday morning vibes. Sometimes the best moments are the stolen ones." Sarah's world shattered in that instant, but the worst was still to come. Sarah stared at Jessica's Instagram story until her eyes burned. The image was clearly taken in a bedroom, but not Jessica's sleek apartment. This was somewhere else, somewhere intimate. A man's watch glinted on the nightstand, a watch Sarah recognized because she had bought it for Mike's birthday 2 years ago. "Sarah, please," Mike was saying, his voice desperate. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" Sarah asked, her voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. "Because it looks like my husband's watch in another woman's bedroom." Mike's silence was answer enough. Sarah clicked through more of Jessica's recent posts with methodical precision, each image a fresh knife wound. Jessica at coffee shop Sarah recognized. Jessica at the Morrison House renovation site. Jessica wearing jewelry that looked expensive, jewelry a struggling blogger couldn't afford on her own. "How long?" Sarah asked. "Sarah, I never meant for this to happen." "How long, Mike?" 2 months, he whispered. 2 months. While Sarah had been carrying their child, teaching her students, planning their future, Mike had been living a completely different life. The timeline made sense now. His sudden energy, his new clothes, his mysterious networking meetings. "I want you to leave," Sarah said quietly. "Sarah, please. Let's talk about this. I made a mistake, but I love you. I love Sophia. I love this baby. Get out of my house." Mike tried to argue, to explain, to minimize what had happened. But Sarah turned away from him, one hand protectively over her belly, and walked to their bedroom. She locked the door and slid down against it, finally allowing herself to break down. Through the door, she could hear Mike moving around, packing a bag, trying to talk to her. Eventually, she heard his truck start and drive away. Sarah spent the night in a haze of shock and pain. By morning, she had made a decision. She called her sister Maria and asked her to watch Sophia. Then she drove to Jessica's apartment. Jessica answered the door in a silk robe, looking perfectly put together despite the early hour. Her smile faltered when she saw Sarah's face. "You must be Sarah," Jessica said, her voice carefully neutral. "I was wondering when we'd meet." "I want to see it," Sarah said. "See what?" "The bedroom. Where you took that photo." Jessica's eyebrows rose slightly, but she stepped aside to let Sarah in. The apartment was everything Sarah's house wasn't expensive. Pristine, designed for display rather than living. "I'm not sure what you're hoping to accomplish," Jessica said as she led Sarah through her living room. "I need to see it. I need to understand." The bedroom was worse than Sarah had imagined, not because it was particularly shocking, but because it was so deliberately perfect. The white bedding, the artistic lighting, the carefully arranged props. This wasn't just a bedroom, it was a stage set for seduction. But what made Sarah's knees buckle was what she saw on the nightstand. Not just Mike's watch, but a photo. A sonogram photo. Her sonogram photo. The one that showed their baby boy at 20 weeks. "That's mine," Sarah whispered. "Mike brought it," Jessica said, not sounding apologetic. "He wanted to show me the baby." The casual cruelty of it took Sarah's breath away. While she had been at work, earning money to support their growing family, her husband had been in this room with this woman, sharing intimate details of their pregnancy. Sarah picked up the sonogram with shaking hands. This should have been sacred, private, theirs alone. Instead, it had become a prop in Jessica's performance. "I'm sorry you're hurt," Jessica said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "But Mike and I have a connection that you can't understand. He's been unhappy for a long time. He's married to me," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "We're having a baby." "And he's been so stressed about that," Jessica replied. "The financial pressure, the responsibility. He needed someone who could give him peace." Sarah looked at this woman who had invaded her life, stolen her husband, contaminated her most precious moments. Jessica was beautiful, young, unencumbered by children or stretch marks or morning sickness. She represented everything Sarah wasn't and couldn't be. "What do you want from him?" Sarah asked. Jessica's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "I want what I deserve," she said. "Mike is building something amazing, and he needs a partner who can help him reach his potential, someone who believes in him. I believe in him. You worry about him. There's a difference." Sarah left the apartment feeling hollowed out, but also strangely clear. She drove to her school, sat in her empty classroom, and made another decision. She opened her laptop and began researching everything she could find about Jessica Lane: public records, social media history, business registrations. What she found was troubling. Jessica had moved to their town only 6 months ago, leaving behind a trail of complaints from previous landlords and employers. Her lifestyle blog showed a pattern of targeting successful men, documenting relationships that always seemed to end with the men supporting her financially. Sarah was not Jessica's first target. She probably wouldn't be her last. But as Sarah dug deeper, she realized she had stumbled onto something bigger than a simple affair. Jessica hadn't just targeted Mike randomly. She had researched him, chosen him specifically, planned every step of their relationship. This wasn't love or even lust. This was business. And Sarah was about to make Jessica realize she had picked the wrong family to mess with. Sarah's sister Maria arrived at 8 p.m. with pizza and determination. She found Sarah hunched over her laptop at the kitchen table, surrounded by printed pages and sticky notes. "Have you eaten anything today?" Maria asked, setting down the food and studying her sister's pale face. "Look at this," Sarah said without preamble, turning the laptop screen toward Maria. "Jessica Lane has been blogging about Mike, about us, about everything." Maria leaned closer, reading over Sarah's shoulder. What they saw made her stomach turn. How to Steal a Married Man in 30 Days was a detailed blog series hidden in the premium member section of Jessica's website. Each post was numbered and dated, chronicling Jessica's systematic seduction of Mike with clinical precision. Day 1 target selection. Maria read aloud. "Choose a man who's successful but undervalued at home. Look for recent stress markers, new business ventures, financial pressure, pregnant wife who's too tired for romance." Sarah's hands shook as she scrolled through more entries. Jessica had documented everything: Mike's morning routine, his insecurities about providing for his family, his dreams of expanding his business. She had researched Sarah too, noting her pregnancy symptoms, her teaching schedule, her social media posts about feeling exhausted. Day 8, first physical contact. Another entry read, "Brief hand touches during conversation. Make them seem accidental but meaningful. Target showed positive response, pulse increased, maintained eye contact longer than appropriate." "This is sick," Maria whispered. "She's treating your marriage like some kind of game." But the worst posts were still to come. Jessica had photographed Mike's belongings in her apartment, documenting each sign of his increasing involvement: his toothbrush in her bathroom, his work clothes in her laundry, the sonogram photo on her nightstand. Day 23, moving into their space, Sarah read, her voice barely audible. Target brought personal items from home today. Wife's pregnancy photo, showing complete emotional transference. Success markers accelerating ahead of schedule. Each post had engagement metrics. Comments from other women asking for advice, sharing their own stories of targeting married men. A whole community of predators treating other people's families like hunting trophies. "We have to show this to Mike," Maria said. "I don't think Mike is the victim here," Sarah replied, clicking on another tab. "Look at this." She had found Jessica's real social media accounts, the ones hidden behind fake names and privacy settings. Photos of expensive dinners, designer clothes, jewelry that clearly cost more than a struggling blogger could afford. And in the background of many photos, different men, older men, married men, based on the tan lines where wedding rings should be. "She's done this before," Sarah said. "Multiple times. This is how she makes money." Maria studied the evidence spread across the table. "Sarah, this is criminal. She's documenting fraud, maybe extortion." "I need to talk to someone," Sarah said. "Someone who understands how this works." The next morning, Sarah met with Detective Riley at the police station. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude who specialized in fraud and harassment cases. "I see this more often than you'd think," Detective Riley said after reviewing Sarah's evidence. "What you've uncovered suggests a pattern of predatory behavior. She targets vulnerable men, documents the relationships for leverage, then monetizes the situation." "What kind of leverage?" Sarah asked, though she was afraid of the answer. "Blackmail, usually. Once the affair is established, she threatens exposure unless the target provides financial support, rent money, credit card payments, expensive gifts." Sarah felt sick. "Is that what she's doing to Mike? Has your husband given her any money that you know of?" Sarah thought about Mike's recent purchases, his new confidence, his mysterious networking meetings. "I don't know. Maybe." Detective Riley made notes in her file. "We need to gather more evidence before we can take action. But what you found is a good start. The blog posts, especially if she's monetizing content about real people without their consent, that could be several different crimes." Sarah left the police station feeling slightly more in control, but also more frightened. Jessica wasn't just a homewrecker. She was a professional predator. And Mike wasn't just unfaithful. He was potentially a victim being manipulated and extorted. That evening, Mike called. "Sarah, we need to talk. There are things you don't understand." "I understand more than you think," Sarah said. "I found her blog. Mike, I know what she's been doing." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long, Sarah thought he had hung up. "You don't know everything," he finally said, his voice hollow. "Then tell me." "She has photos, videos, things that could destroy everything I've built. She says if I don't pay her, she'll send them to all my clients, post them online. Sarah, I could lose the business. We could lose the house." Sarah's heart broke for him, but also hardened with resolve. Jessica had played this game before, but she had never faced someone like Sarah Martinez, a mother protecting her family, a teacher who understood that bullies only responded to strength. "Come home," Sarah said. "We'll figure this out together." "I've ruined everything," Mike whispered. "No," Sarah said firmly. "She did. But we're going to stop her." As Sarah hung up the phone, she felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks: hope. Not for her marriage that might never recover, but for justice, for protection, for making sure Jessica Lane never did this to another family. The war was about to begin, and Sarah was ready to fight. Sarah spent the next week building her case with the methodical precision she usually reserved for lesson planning, while Mike stayed at a motel, ashamed and avoiding her calls. Sarah documented everything. She screenshot Jessica's blog posts before they could be deleted, compiled financial records showing unexplained charges on Mike's credit cards, and reached out to Jessica's previous targets. Detective Riley had been right. Jessica's pattern was consistent across 3 different cities over the past 5 years. Married men with growing businesses, pregnant wives, financial stress. The script was always the same: seduce, document, extort. "She made my husband give her $15,000, one woman told Sarah over the phone from Phoenix. Said she'd send photos to his business partners if he didn't pay. We almost lost our house because of her." Another victim from Denver shared a similar story. "She destroyed my marriage, then disappeared when she got what she wanted. Changed her name, moved to a new city, started over." But Jessica had made a crucial mistake this time. She had documented everything in her blog, creating a detailed confession of her crimes. She had gotten so confident, so successful, that she had started treating her victims' pain as entertainment for her followers. Sarah printed every blog post, every comment, every piece of evidence. Then she drove to Jessica's apartment for a final confrontation. Jessica answered the door in designer workout clothes, looking annoyed at the interruption. "Sarah, what do you want now?" "I want to make you a deal," Sarah said, stepping into the apartment without invitation. Jessica's eyes narrowed. "What kind of deal?" Sarah pulled out a folder thick with printed pages. "I know about Phoenix. I know about Denver. I know about all of them." For the first time since Sarah had met her, Jessica looked genuinely surprised. "I found your blog," Sarah continued. "All of it. The detailed instructions on how to target married men. The photos you've been taking of Mike. The money you've been extorting from him." Jessica's composure cracked slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Day 16 financial leverage," Sarah read from one of the printouts. "Target agreed to pay for dinner and shopping trip after I showed him compromising photos on my phone. Estimated value $800. Monthly projection 5,000 plus." The blood drained from Jessica's face. "Here's my offer," Sarah said, setting the folder on Jessica's pristine coffee table. "You disappear. Tonight, you delete everything: the blog, the photos, the videos. You never contact Mike again. Never mention our family again. Never come back to this town again." "And if I don't?" Jessica asked, trying to sound defiant. "Then I take all of this to the police, to the FBI, to every news station in the state. I make sure every woman you've targeted knows where to find you. I destroy your life the same way you've been destroying theirs." Sarah pulled out her phone and showed Jessica a prepared social media post. It contained photos of Jessica's real identity documents, her previous addresses, screenshots of her blog confessing to multiple crimes. "One click," Sarah said. "That's all it takes to make you famous for all the wrong reasons." Jessica stared at the phone, calculating. Sarah could see her weighing options, looking for an escape route. "You can't prove anything," Jessica said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. "Actually, I can..." Sarah pulled out another document. "Detective Riley is very interested in your activities. Apparently, what you've been doing is called a romance con, and it's a federal crime when it crosses state lines, which yours has multiple times." The fight went out of Jessica completely. She sank onto her white sofa, looking smaller and younger than Sarah had ever seen her. "What about Mike?" she asked quietly. "What about him? Does he know about this, about what you found?" Sarah studied the woman who had tried to destroy her family. Even now, Jessica was thinking about her own interests, not the damage she had caused. Mike made his choices, Sarah said, but he's my family. You're not. You never were. You were just a predator who picked the wrong prey. Jessica nodded slowly. How long do I have? 24 hours to be out of town. 72 hours to delete everything online. After that, I press send on this post and let the internet do the rest. Sarah left the folder on Jessica's table and walked toward the door. Sarah, Jessica called after her. Sarah turned back. I am sorry, Jessica said, and for the first time, she sounded genuine. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry. Sorry you got caught, or sorry you did it? Sarah asked. Jessica was quiet for a long moment. Both, I think. Sarah nodded and left without another word. 48 hours later, Jessica Lane had vanished as completely as if she had never existed. Her apartment was empty, her social media accounts deleted, her blog offline. The only trace she left behind was an envelope slipped under Sarah's door containing $5,000 in cash and a note that said simply, "For the baby." Mike came home that evening, looking broken and ashamed. Is she gone? He asked. Yes, Sarah said. What happens now? Sarah looked at her husband, this man she had loved for 10 years, who had fathered her children, who had just betrayed everything they had built together. Now we figure out if there's anything left to save, she said. 3 months later. Sarah stood in the nursery she had painted herself, holding her newborn son. Thomas Michael Martinez had arrived 2 weeks early, as if he couldn't wait to meet the world. He was perfect 10 fingers, 10 toes, and his father's dark eyes. Mike sat in the rocking chair nearby, but there was a careful distance between them. He had moved back into the house, but into the guest room. They were trying to rebuild, but it was slow, careful work. The counselor wants to see us twice a week now, Mike said quietly. I know. Sarah adjusted the baby's blanket. Are you okay with that? I'm okay with whatever it takes. The marriage counseling was hard, painful. Some days Sarah wasn't sure they would make it. The trust was broken, maybe permanently, but they had children together, a life together, and Dr. Morrison said that healing was possible if both partners were committed to the work. Mike had told her everything, eventually, how Jessica had made him feel important, desired, successful. How she had gradually isolated him from Sarah by making him feel like Sarah didn't understand him. How the photos and videos had become a trap he couldn't escape from. She was good at what she did, Dr. Morrison had explained. Predators like Jessica are skilled at finding vulnerabilities and exploiting them. That doesn't excuse the choices Mike made, but it does help explain how someone who loves his family could end up in such a destructive situation. Sarah had started a support group for women who had been targeted by romance scams. What she had discovered was a hidden epidemic of Jessica Lanes, women who made their living by destroying families. The support group met weekly in the church basement, sharing stories and strategies for healing. You saved my life, one woman told Sarah. When I found out about the blog, about what she was really doing, it helped me realize that what happened to my marriage wasn't my fault. Sarah's teaching position had been threatened briefly when the scandal first broke, but her principal had stood by her. You're a victim here, not the perpetrator, Mrs. Chen had said firmly. This school supports you completely. The financial damage had been significant. Mike had given Jessica nearly $8,000 over 2 months, money they had saved for the house down payment, but slowly they were rebuilding. Mike's business was actually doing better than ever, apparently. Surviving public scandal had somehow enhanced his reputation for resilience. "People respect that you fought for your family," his business partner had said, "and that you were honest about your mistakes." Now, looking at their new son, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness exactly. Not yet. But peace. "I got a call from Detective Riley today," Mike said. "Jessica was arrested in Atlanta. Same con, different family. The blog evidence you gathered helped them build the case." Sarah nodded. She felt satisfaction at the news, but also sadness. Another family had been targeted. Another woman had gone through what she had experienced. "I'm thinking about writing about this," Sarah said. "Not for revenge, but to help other women recognize the warning signs." "That's a good idea," Mike said. "You could probably help a lot of people." Sophia appeared in the doorway, climbing onto Mike's lap to get a better look at her baby brother. "He's so small," she whispered. "You were that small once," Sarah told her. "Will he play with me when he gets bigger?" "Absolutely," Mike said, kissing the top of Sophia's head. "He's going to need his big sister to teach him everything." As Sarah watched Mike with their daughter, she felt a familiar ache. This was what she had almost lost. Not just her marriage, but the simple moments of being a family. Jessica had tried to take this from them, but they had survived. Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Sarah and Mike sat on their front porch. It was the first time they had been alone together without the counselor or the children as buffers. "Do you think we'll make it?" Mike asked. Sarah considered the question seriously. "I don't know. Some days I think yes, some days I think no. But I know we're both trying, and that's something." "I love you," Mike said. "I know I don't have the right to say that anymore, but I do." "I love you too," Sarah replied. "That's what makes this so hard. If I didn't love you, I would have just walked away." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their neighborhood settle into evening, children playing in yards, couples walking dogs, normal people living normal lives. This was what Sarah had been fighting for, the right to be ordinary, to be safe, to raise her children without predators circling their family. 6 months later, Sarah published her article, "How a Lifestyle Blogger Tried to Steal My Family." It went viral, shared by thousands of women who recognized pieces of their own stories in Sarah's experience. She started getting calls from lawyers, from other victims, from reporters wanting to understand the psychology of romance scams. "You've started something important," Detective Riley told her. "We're seeing more reports, more awareness. That blog evidence you found has become a model for how we investigate these cases." Sarah's marriage survived, though it looked different now. More honest, more careful, less taken for granted. They moved to a slightly bigger house, one without any memories of Jessica Lane. Mike started going to individual therapy in addition to their couples counseling. "I have to understand how I could have been so stupid," he told Sarah. "So selfish. I never want to risk our family like that again." Some evenings, Sarah would think about Jessica and wonder where she was, whether she was still targeting families, still leaving destruction in her wake. But mostly, Sarah focused on what she had built from the ruins: stronger boundaries, deeper friendships, a career helping other women navigate similar crises. She had learned that love alone wasn't enough to protect a family. You needed vigilance, communication, and the courage to fight for what mattered most. Jessica Lane had tried to teach Sarah that she was powerless, that beautiful young women would always be able to take what they wanted from older, tired wives. Instead, Sarah had learned that she was stronger than she had ever imagined, strong enough to investigate, to confront, to rebuild, strong enough to forgive without forgetting, to love without being naive. The mistress had taken a photo in their bedroom, thinking it was a victory declaration. Instead, it had become evidence in her own downfall. And the first chapter in Sarah's story of survival. Sarah's story proves 3 things. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Document everything because evidence defeats lies. And you're stronger than any predator who targets your family. The photo Jessica took was meant to be her victory. Instead, it became the evidence that destroyed her. If this story reminded you that ordinary people can defeat professional manipulators, smash that like button right now. Share this with every woman you care about because these predators are everywhere, and knowledge is protection. Subscribe and hit notifications for more stories of real people refusing to be victims and fighting back against impossible odds. What would you have done in Sarah's situation? Drop your answer in the comments. Your story might save someone else's family. Remember, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's building a life so strong that no predator can ever touch it again.